Hey, running out of time, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to do a mini albums review video, aka an album review, but I review a bunch of albums instead of just one album, because I am actually running out of time. I'm leaving my home to the USA in 10 days. I haven't started packing. I have the final exams in my college that I hadn't taken. I still need to study, and there's still a bunch of other stuff that I have to do. Movies I have to watch to review because I want to watch them. They're on my schedule, and a bunch of other stuff that I have to plan, before I go. So yes, absolutely busy. So unfortunately, I only have time to put a bunch of albums together and review them all at once. And the thing is, I don't even have that much time to listen to these albums thoroughly. So I apologize in advance. I'm sorry if I don't talk about these albums in depth enough because I just don't have that much time, okay? I'm sorry. But let's review a bunch of albums. Let's go! Okay, first four albums I'm going to be talking about are all Arca albums. Arca is a producer, singer, rapper, musician from Venezuela, and she had released four albums all at once, out of nowhere. I didn't even friggin' know this. Like, I think a couple years ago, she released Kick 1, which was just, like, okay. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It's this experimental weird, electronic, glitchy, deconstructed thing. It's interesting, but I didn't really listen to it all that much. But now she suddenly released four albums, so I guess that's enough to catch my attention to talk about these four albums. And these four albums are Kick 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to talk about them in order. First off, we have Kick 2, which is very much similar to Kick 1. It is okay. It is pretty much what you expect an Arca album to be. There are bangers in this thing. There are slower cuts. There are some experimental tracks. It's all pretty nice. The opener is a little stagnant, and then the track afterwards, Prada slash Rakata, is this reverby futuristic track with a very nice beat, but it wasn't really clicking for me until a little bit later when we have the track Tiro, which is a total banger. I love the deconstructed beat, the vocal samples, the rapping, the way it is so chopped up. It's awesome. It's exciting. It's tense, and I really love it. And then there's this track, Born Yesterday, featuring Sia, out of all people, Sia, which is very interesting, and it serves as a bit of a nice, angelic, beautiful breather in the album, and it's a strange combination, but it works. Some tracks on Kick 2 are a little bit brief. I wish they are longer, but overall it's nice. The track Araña is a little directionless and a little fragmented for my liking. Some other tracks in the album is also kind of like that. A little bit too choppy, maybe too abstract for its own good. Doesn't really hold up all that well. So yeah, kind of mixed on this album. There are bangers here, and then there are some other so-so tracks, feeling a 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Kick 3. And Kick 3 is an album full of bangers. It's fiery, it's passionate, it's absolutely balls insane. Just awesome. It's like along the lines of Death Grips and Yeezus era Kanye West. It's super noisy and deconstructed, and you know me, I love that kind of shit. So I naturally really like this album. The opener Bruja has these very confident rapping. It's sharp, it's noisy, and that leads into Incendio, which has these awesome bouncy club rhythms and these metallic crushing noises. That's so challenging to the ears. And again, I love that stuff. Fiera is this futuristic wonky track. I wish this track has a stronger beat because it sounds really interesting, but it doesn't carry on all that well. But the second half of Kick 3 is banger after banger, super tight paced. Electra Rex is speedy, it's jittery, and the next track, Ripples, is freaking wild. It's wild. And Senorita is one of the most hard-hitting industrial rap bangers of the year. And then we have My Two, the track Intimate Flesh, which is very bassy, and the track Hoya, which is a calm ending with these very sprinkly keyboards. It's a really nice ending to the very violently noisy album. I also really love how anxiety-inducing some of the tracks become. The vocal chatter, the intense, irregular, speedy breathing, it's all very noisy. And I'm sorry if I don't get into the lyrics because I'm not very good at Spanish, and B, I don't have that much time to get into the lyrical topics on every single track, but I'm sure they all deal with themes of loneliness and change and being open-minded. So pretty cool. There's that. I like this album. Feeling 8 out of 10. Alright, Kick 4. This is the ambient one. This is the album where it starts to get slow, quiet, and ambient, kind of melodic, kind of loose, kind of atmospheric. There are some beautiful tracks here and there, like Xenomorph Girl, which is very beautiful and stripped back. And yeah, there are also tracks here that I actually don't really like all that much, like Alien Inside, which seems kind of dragged. It seems it doesn't fit into this album. The track Queer features Planning to Rock, and I'm not really a big fan of Planning to Rock's vocals. Maybe it's just me, but it's a little bit annoying. The track Boqui Floja feels a little bit out of place again, and Last Woman Found is fine, but I wouldn't say it's very great. But still, I'm enjoying the production. I think it's very interesting, very tasteful. But Kick 4 is just not my cup of tea. It's basically the noisy deconstructedness of the first two albums that I talked about in this video, but not as strong, I guess. Feeling a 5 on this thing, 5 out of 10, yes. Kick 5. This is also a very mellow album, also melodic, also slow-paced. Very minimalistic this time, but this time we have more interesting and compelling production choices from Arca. The tracks Estrogen has these really beautiful plucky keyboards that sort of rise up to the top. Ether is a lonesome piano bit that is long, but at least it has its nuances. And the track Sanctuary is a very airy, spacious track that's full of these spacey beats. Tierno has the croony singing, and the rest of the album is kind of okay. I wouldn't say it's great, but there are, again, some tasteful production choices that I really like. Crown is not bad. Fire Prayer reaches a really beautiful climax, and of course we have La Infinita, which is kind of airy and directionless, not really all that great. So yeah, strong 6 to a light 7 for the album. There we go. I've reviewed all 4 Arca albums. Alright, aside from the Arca albums, I would also like to talk about some other artists in this review, one of which is Mountain Goats, folk rock band Mountain Goats, with the new album Dark in Here. And it's really good. It's a really solid meat and potatoes, country flavored, I wouldn't say folk actually. I would say, man, how do I define this? It borders on folk rock, country, and like soft rock. But yeah, it's great. I love the album opener. Parisian Enclave has these runny country flavored guitar rhythms that I really like. I like the crisp vocal performances. They seem really honest and down to earth, and that gives the album a lot of personality. The second track goes for a more rock flavor, which like I think of the word, I wanted to say the word more, but in my head I'm already thinking of the word flavor, so I ended up wanting to say maver. just whack. I'm just rushing my words here, but yeah, the second track goes for a more rocky flavor, and it actually works. And I really like the production here. The title track has a real nice, spacious quality to it. You feel like When I listen to the track, I feel like I'm in some bar in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in the USA, and I'm just hearing this obscure band playing with these spacious drums and these funky guitars, this bass. And I also really like the lyrics. Again, I'm sorry that I don't have the time to get into every single line of lyric, but I like the lyrics on this track. They're interesting. And other tracks I like on this album include the slow part on death metal albums, cool title, but it's also a meat and potatoes piano and drum track. And I also really like Arguing with the Ghost of Peter Lochner about his Coney Island baby review. I don't understand that, but very interesting title. This track is an easygoing guitar ballad with some really sweet chords, and same goes for the ending of the album as well. A really sweet and concise ending. So yeah, definitely a good album. Definitely enjoying this one. Probably gonna end up in my top 50 of the year. Who knows? Feeling a light 8 out of 10. Next up, we have LRain with the album Fatigue. Thanks to Anthony Fantano, my attention is brought to this album that is actually released like half a year ago, but I'm only talking about it now. This album is a 30-minute long experimental This album is a 30-minute long experimental neo soul, neo psychedelia experience that is more interesting than I expected. I thought it would just be some by the numbers R&B flavored neo psychedelia, but it's actually more interesting than that. There's some very enveloping sound play on this album, and these sound collages, these found sounds sort of layered on top of one another, creating some swirly effects. Like, it does have some pretty interesting sound play, and the way the album structure is also quite interesting. It's basically one interlude, one track, one interlude, one track, which sometimes is a bit annoying. I just want to hear the set of tracks, but it also adds the atmosphere to the album. Tracks like Find It is great. I like the layered vocals, and the second half is very distant, airy, spacey. I like Blame Me with the weepy guitars and the heavenly stringed back ending of the track. Suck Teeth is a very sweet and summery track, a very R&B flavored, but also really washed and drenched in like chords and layers of instrumentals. And Kill Self, there's a track on the album called Kill Self, and it starts out very warped and strange, but for some reason at the very last minute, it becomes kind of bouncy, which is unexpected for a track called Kill Self, but here we go. And my favorite track here is Two Face. It's this very enjoyable, lush, psych pop track with these very odd piano chords, shuffly drums, punchy rhythms, and the whole thing is really great. And my main gripe with the album, not really main gripe, I mean, I think the album is really good, but I think the last few tracks in the album end off a little weak. I wish they are longer, and I wish they are stronger. But still, really nice, and I'm looking forward to whatever she comes up next. Feeling a strong 7 on this album. Finally, I'd like to take some time out to talk about a new Sloppy Jane album, Madison. And yeah, this album is a really rich, dense, and lush art pop album with some really nice production. And they actually recorded this album in a cave, so it sounds very chamber. There are some echoey qualities to the music, which makes the musical experience even more interesting. I'm at a lack of words right now. I'm sorry, but yeah, I like the grand instrumentation. The track Party Anthem is really good. The lyrics range from trauma to regret to social acceptance, backed by layers of instrumentations that are very beautiful and fluid. I really love it, and the production and the songwriting is pretty sweet and solid for the rest of the album. But there's one thing I dislike about the album, and that is that sometimes it feels a little campy and cartoony. And an album being campy and cartoony is fine. It just needs to do it in a more committed and in a more tasteful fashion. There are tracks on the album like Judy's Bedroom where we are hit with some pretty dark lyrics about murder, which is cool. You know, songs about murder and very serious lyrical topics being explored. I like that. But forcefully singing it in a child's perspective, like a lullaby, and it's almost like the lyrics are being sung by a child here. Like the lyrics are very simple. The word choices are very watered down, and it just feels like again, I think it's interesting to explore something dark and traumatic from a children's point of view, but it's not done very well and it's not done very tastefully on this track, in my opinion. And that is not the only track that does that on the album. We also have a couple other tracks on the album that goes for this lullaby-esque, childlike perspective style, which again, cool concept, but maybe a little campy for my taste. But still, I like the songwriting. I like the production a lot, and feeling a 7 out of 10 for the album. So, yeah, these are my thoughts on these albums for the rest of the year. Before I leave Hong Kong, I will review 2 more albums. One is Death's Dynamic Shroud's new album. I originally wanted to put it in the album in this mini albums review video, but you know what? I want to make an individual review for that album because I'd like to talk about that album more. Plus the new Trico album, which I'm absolutely excited to talk about. So, yeah. And then very soon it's going to be list week, and I'm going to be putting out, best albums list, best songs list, yada yada. So it's going to be wrap up from here. So if there's a new album released from now on, and it's really good, it won't end up on my list because it's too late. I'm wrapping it all up. It will end up on next year's list, but not on this year's list. I'm sorry. So, what are your thoughts on these albums? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate them? Like if you like them, subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.